College Board stimulus, false nostalgia, Norberg states that is a false promise because we can't go back. And even if we could, we wouldn't find what we were looking for. It was never there, and in any case, would not be able to give us the solution to our current problems. Now this quote here is important because it emphasizes how looking into the past will not solve today's problems. Complex issues like chemotherapy induce cognitive decline. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Rewiring the Brain After Chemotherapy, and my name is Vidya Muthakumar. The problem I am addressing today is chemotherapy-induced cognitive decline in cancer patients. My research question is, to what extent does modernized treatments positively influence chemotherapy-induced cognitive decline in cancer patients in the United States? And my argument is that modernized treatments like cannabinoids, gene therapy, and pharmacological approaches should be used to treat chemotherapy-induced cognitive decline due to its positive impacts. Now looking at this graph here, Dr. Sandana Kohli, a renowned researcher, oncologist that works at the Mayo Clinic with a PhD in biochemistry, stated approximately 75% of patients endure cognitive decline during chemotherapy, and also another 50% face cognitive decline post-chemotherapy as well. Now looking at this graph here, the X variable represents the time frame, while the Y variable represents the percentage in success rate. So looking at this bar here, it represents 75% of the patients that endure cognitive decline during chemotherapy, which is approximately 1.5 patients in America right now. But not only that, this bar here shows the 50% of patients that endure cognitive decline post-treatment, which is 0 to 6 months, which is 2.5 million. But then we have another bar that shows the 35% of patients that endure cognitive decline post-treatment, which is plus 6 months, which is 6.3 million. So apparently there are 10.3 million patients in the United States as of now that are being affected. And that is why in the status quo, this is such a big problem. Now moving on to my first solution, cannabinoids. Cannabinoids are molecules and compounds that essentially help cell communication work better through drug treatments within the molecules. So in this graph here by Dr. Peter Wang at the Harvard Institute, he stated that these CB1 receptors help with the brain, which are neurons, and the CB2 receptors are immune cells. So the red here represents the cannabinoids. So essentially, when you use cannabinoids in chemo treatments, they enable and attach to the CB1 and CB2 receptors, enabling the communication better. Cancer is essentially a disease where the cell cannot communicate with each other and it's a rapid cell growth. So enabling the cannabinoids in these receptors can make communication way better with these receptors and also help cognitive decline. Next, we have gene therapy. According to Dr. Etafe at the University of South Carolina, he has a PhD and also mentored students at Harvard for 5 years. He did a research study which shows that gene therapy is already successful in chemotherapy. Now looking at this graph here, the Y variable represents the success rate, while the X variable represents the time periods, and these lines indicate different cancer types. The dark blue one is breast cancer, the medium one is lung cancer, and the light blue one is blood cancer. So as we can see here, as time went on, gene therapy has been successful in chemotherapy. Gene therapy is essentially the modification of faulty genes with better genes. And so we've seen that it already is successful in chemotherapy, but also according to Dr. Julia Mattei in the University of North Carolina, she stated that genotherapy has been very influential and successful when it came to cognitive decline. They've already used it in Alzheimer's, dementia, and many other cognitive brain diseases, which actually have shown success. So implementing gene therapy into chemotherapy can also help with these cognitive decline effects. Also, pharmacological approaches. Essentially just drug medication which can help patients. So looking at this diagram here, these are mice. So to make this easier to understand, let's pair A with C and B with D. A has the pharmacological treatment, which is the EPR+, while B does not have it. So this is without the treatment. So with the treatment, we can see here that it only targets specific areas and it's not affecting the whole mice. It's only affecting the areas that do have the disease. Now looking at this one, when you put the treatment in, such as chemotherapy, it's affecting the whole body of the mice, proving that this is why there are cognitive decline and it's affecting other places. So by implementing these pharmacological approaches, we're only targeting the certain areas that need to be addressed so it can reduce the cognitive decline. Now let's talk about the limitations of these solutions. For cannabinoid, there are very much delayed cognitive benefits because we haven't seen them in a very much of a long-term run. It's just like they're in the shortcoming, but it's not there sudden. And then gene therapy has a lot of ethical concerns because it's still new in the medical industry and it hasn't been much to research. But the ethical concern is that there are many long-term risks which we are unaware of, but also we're modifying a whole bloodline with genetic, so we don't know what's there to come. So it is ethically concerning. But also pharmacological therapies have a risk of over-medication. We aren't fully in depth of the research, but we don't know the complete dosages on what to give to treat those specific targeted areas. So in conclusion, modernized treatments such as cannabinoids, gene therapy, and pharmacological approaches positively impact cognitive decline. It should be implemented. Thank you.
Sorry, there's no applause.
No, it's okay.
All right, 2 questions for you. What information did you need that you weren't able to find, and then how'd you deal with that?
So information that I needed that I wasn't able to find would be a lot of information on gene therapy because it's still relatively new and it's still evolving in the medical industry. It took me a while to get my hands on a couple of those articles, but I scrolled through Google Scholar and I looked at a couple of academic peer-reviewed journals which helped me out in my research.
All right. And what advice would you give to somebody, based on what you just said, what advice would you give somebody that wants to research this in the future?
I would say keep an open mind. I walked into this topic with a very steady mind, so I had difficulties researching and involving my topic and questions. So I would say walk in with a very open mind, but also keep your data really reliable because I'm very focused on STEM and science, and we want to give our audience